One day, Jesus was hungry. He saw a lush green fig tree in the distance and came near for fruit. Since it was not the season for figs, he did not find any. But to fulfill the saying, a hungry man is an angry man, Jesus cursed the showy tree and went on his way. The tree withered away to its roots. To illuminate this incident, the story of the rich man and Lazarus can be used. Or to explain that story, we can use this incident. The way context is used to interpret the text, one text can be used to interpret the other. By mashing these two texts together and by using imagination from our context, we are going to get an interpretation of these biblical characters. There was a poor man named Lazarus. He was sick, but there was no one to look after him. He was oozing blood from his head to toe. Like a snail, he carried his broken body and moved from place to place to beg for his food. One day, he saw in the distance a beautiful house. It looked like a lush green fig tree. He praised God and went to see if he could find anything in it. When he came near, he found the rich man who was meticulously dressed in fine clothing. Because of his family background, he was a well-known scribe of that land. His job was to copy and paste the scriptures. Since he worked at the Jerusalem temple, he had a regular monthly income. His career was something like a career in the software industry. It had many perks and benefits. It even allowed him to work from the comforts of his home. All thanks to his parents. From his childhood, they had clear-cut plans for his future. They encouraged him to aspire to be a scribe. They spent a lot of money to give him a good education. He learned at the feet of Gamaliel. Saul was one of his classmates. Later, he was renamed to Paul for some reason. The rich man could not understand that. He asked, how can Saul give up his family by changing the name given by his parents? The so-called Paul even threw away his hard-earned qualification from the Gamaliel Institute of Scribery. The rich man could not wrap his head around that either. He wondered what could be easier than copy-pasting. He even tried to convince Paul. He argued, many aspire to have our life, but few get the opportunity. It is purely because of God's grace we got this profession. If you leave this, no one will respect you in our society. Is it because you don't have job satisfaction? Not everyone is satisfied with what they do. We have responsibilities. God is merciful in giving us job security in these uncertain times. Our families have a safe and comfortable life in the city. How can you disregard God and discard His blessings like that? Paul did not listen to the rich man. He said, whatever gain I had, I counted as loss. The rich man was clueless. He couldn't convince Paul either. He gave up and continued his career in copying. He said to himself, not everyone gets the dream job. I have kids now. I must work for their future. A little backstory here. Actually, in the past, the rich man wanted to become a doctor like his childhood friend Luke. He had all the talents for that profession. But his parents objected. They said to him, Luke is a Gentile, and therefore he cannot become a Jewish scribe. You are born in God's chosen race. Your grandfather is the high priest, and your father is the head scribe. Therefore, you must also become a scribe. Our whole family is religious. We will get you a job in Solomon's temple. If you disobey us and become a doctor, who will respect you? Do you want to touch and treat those penniless lepers every day? Do you also want to become a leper? What's wrong with you? There's no money in that profession. You cannot find a decent girl from our community who will trust their daughter with a doctor. Therefore, don't waste your life chasing your dreams. Do what we say. There is a reason why we named you rich man. If you get a girl child, may God forbid that you name her Mary Billionaire. If God blesses you with a boy child, you call him Young Chelliah. Though this word is not there in the dictionary, as the people of faith, we must lead by example. Nothing is impossible for those who believe. It may not be a thing now, but it will definitely come to pass. God will see to it. He gives wealth to His children to keep them as His witnesses to the non-believers. That's what He did to Uncle Job. Look at his net worth. He was the richest man of his generation. The Bible provides us with a promise. It says that the righteous flourish like the palm tree and grow like a cedar in Lebanon. And with many such verses, they bombarded him. The rich man couldn't resist his parents. Since his Sunday school teachers taught him to obey his father and mother, he settled for a career and a girl chosen by his parents. Days rolled on. The rich man's parents were well pleased with their son. They proudly talked about him with everyone. By depriving other children, they gave him the major portion of their wealth. The rich man's wife was also from a well-to-do family. She brought with her a large sum of money and gold. They bought lands, built houses, and established their kingdom on this planet. Famous pastors, preachers, and prophets preached about the rich man's success story. They taught that this is how we could show to the world that we are blessed by God. They often quoted the verse, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich." Many followed their teachings. The rich man's family became a well-known family in the land. They had their friends, relatives, and well-wishers, especially the religious workers, visiting them all the time. Many sought their counsel on personal and spiritual matters. The rich man also preached regularly in their synagogue because his grandfather gave him an honorary preaching assignment. But Paul had no invitation to preach anywhere. He became a pauper, roaming from place to place, pitching tents for his living. Who would invite such a loser to preach in their synagogue anyway? Though the land was filled with hungry people, the rich man always had food on his table. He feasted sumptuously along with his high-profile visitors. He was slowly gaining weight though. He wanted to restart his old workout regime. He was quite athletic when he was young. But due to his tight family, social, professional, and ministerial schedules, he could not hit the gymnasium. He started putting weight around his waistline. He had to order new bigger size clothes every now and then. It irritated him, but he promised himself that he would get rid of that extra fat in a month. That month never came in his life. Time went by. The rich man was busy with his secular and spiritual assignments. Due to the sedentary lifestyle, he started developing minor illnesses and few permanent conditions in his body. He didn't have the heart to bring any significant lifestyle changes. He didn't take them seriously. His spiritual guides also encouraged him. They said, "These illnesses are just a thorn in the flesh, a messenger from Satan. Our Lord tests His servants like that. We all have these conditions in our bodies, but God's grace is sufficient for us. So don't worry, keep up the good fight." One day, the rich man threw a high-profile party to celebrate his birthday. The social heavyweights were invited. Not everyone wanted to raise this concern, but one of his invitees asked, "Who laid a sick man at your gate? The whole street is filled with the stench of his decaying body." The rich man came out, saw Lazarus at his gate, and felt uncomfortable within himself. According to his custom, it is a bad omen to see such people. He said angrily to his friends, "Nowadays, wherever I go, I see these beggars. There is a strict rule in our country not to beg. No one follows that. These sick people are not allowed to enter our gated community. Still, somehow they infiltrate into our streets to infect our children and old people." The rich man sent his slaves to remove Lazarus from his neighborhood. He then went back to continue his feasting. His slaves came out and gently asked Lazarus to go away. Poor Lazarus got up, but he couldn't move any further. He sat near the cornerstone, desired to be fed with what is thrown out of the house. But what fell from the rich man's table was given to his dogs. The dogs then came out and licked the sores of Lazarus for more. After feeding those dogs with his flesh and blood, leaning on the cornerstone, Lazarus rested his eyes for a while, and he never opened them again. In the cool of the day, God's angels were hovering over the land. They saw a lifeless body leaning on the bosom of Jesus. But that sweet soul sitting next to the dead body was still and speechless. It was beholding the beauty of its Savior. They reported this incident to the Father God in heaven. He sent his angel scouts to pick him up and take him to another comforting place called Abraham's lap. He then looked at his son and inquired about the rich man. The Son of God replied, "I was hungry. I saw a pompous house in the distance. I went to see if I could find anything in it. When I came to it, I found nothing but a lukewarmer. He made me vomit. He was not bearing fruit in keeping with repentance. And therefore I cursed him, saying, 'May no one ever eats fruit from you again.'" After hearing the curse of the sun god, the spirit god washed his hands off the rich man. The Father God was deeply wounded because he lost a soul to the doomdom of the devil. He was sad for the future of that rich man. The future of the rich man started getting brighter and brighter every day. He was receiving promotions in his career. Thanks to nepotism, after his father's involuntary retirement due to ailing health, the rich man became the head scribe. He came to his synagogue and testified before everyone. The worship leader preached how God was blessing the rich man in every step of his life. Many got inspired to follow his example. Due to his social status, the rich man became the top contender for the position of the high priest. He promised his followers that his team would work day and night to improve the plight of his countrymen. The election was getting near. They were fasting and praying for the big day. Meanwhile, the society started to crumble from its foundation. Father God asked his angels the reason. They replied, "Though Lazarus came closer to the rich man, there was a great chasm between them. He lost his life because of that. But it is not just his household. Most of the well-to-do families have no regard for those who are below them in their class structure. They, however, pray without ceasing for the unreached and the underprivileged. But they don't recognize when they see one. Even if they recognize, they spare some change from their abundance and move on with their lives. They don't see that as a deeply rooted problem in their society. If their conscience pricks them by some means, they neglect it with ease because they think that they don't have such a calling in their life. They're waiting for you to listen to their prayers so that you may speak in someone's heart to address these concerns. The people in power, on the other hand, came to their positions by giving so many promises to the deprived communities. But they did not keep their word. They are supposed to stand for the poor, but they side mainly with the rich. The social injustice has gone up because of that. Wages are low and they are also not paid on time. Laborers are exploited everywhere. Their bodies are broken in the process. Many lose their health and are permanently crippled at a young age. This is how victims like Lazarus are made. They continuously come out of this unjust social structure, the way products come out of the conveyor belt. They sweat their blood to make the rich richer, but the land has no regard for their lives and livelihoods. The hunger for women's flesh is also at an all-time high now. Martha and Mary, the twin sisters of Lazarus, were eaten away because of that. If it goes on like this, the whole society will implode soon in an instant. After explaining the ground reality, the angels implored God to cleanse the land. The demon standing next to them said, "We can help. We will administer a deadly disease." The Almighty was silent for a while. He then replied, "No need for a deadly disease. Just send something like the seasonal flu. They will die due to their pre-existing conditions. As always, leave a remnant though. I will give them some more time. It is because of the kindness I showed to their forefathers and children." The saints objected. What happens to the wicked happens also to the righteous. They both will die because of this pestilence. This is vanity and a great evil. "I know how to protect the chosen ones," replied God with an assuring voice. "Even if I allow them to fall, I will shelter them in my presence." A novel disease started to ravage the land. All of them hid in their houses. After a few days, many of them got fed up. The religious were the first to come out because their businesses were hit hard. The non-religious followed them because they were not getting laid in days. The religious rebuked their followers by asking, "Where is your faith?" The rich man was at the forefront, preaching and teaching his countrymen. He proclaimed, "Don't fear, God is on our side. If God is for us, what can be against us?" I was reading the scriptures the other day. God gave me a verse. He promised, "No plague shall come near our tent. No evil shall be allowed to befall us, for He will command His angels concerning us to guard us in all our ways." This is this month's promise verse from God. Many got encouraged by His prophecy. Bravely they started coming out, but got infected and permanently quarantined themselves in their graves. Meanwhile, the rich man received invitations from so many synagogues. He became an itinerant and preacher. He was busy moving from place to place, and therefore he also got infected by that anti-lukewarm germ. Since it was a lazy bug, the body took 1 or 2 weeks to show the symptoms. During that incubation period, the rich man was traveling extensively, preaching in their worship places, infecting his audience with his message and the microbe. The symptoms eventually started to show up for the rich man. He came to know that he got infected, but his faith in God was not infected. Boldly he said, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me. He will never leave me nor forsake me." Many praised his courage and started to roam like never before. Seeing that, the rich man got encouraged in his spirit. Though his body was failing, his faith was increasing. He said to everyone that he was fighting the good fight. However, his body was not willing to fight that fight. It succumbed to that pathogen. But the rich man died with full faith on God. The rich man's children were pursuing their careers in other parts of the world. They couldn't come to the funeral. Few came to pick up his body, but none came to pick up his soul. When that neither clean nor unclean soul had gone out of his body, it passed through waterless places, seeking rest, but found none. Then it went and joined 7 other souls more lukewarm than itself. They all wandered the wilderness without finding the living water. They came to know from some other equally deprived souls that a spiritual gathering is going on in a place called hell. All of them joined together to become a legion and moved to hell in search of the living water. The rich man's soul was elated to see so many pastors, preachers, prophets, and religious leaders in hell. He felt so good to be in their midst. Every day, there were a countless number of seminars on critical spiritual topics. Highly qualified individuals were presenting in those programs. The rich man never felt such a spiritual atmosphere anywhere before. But there was one issue. He couldn't find the living water. Because of that, several other irritations started to spike in his soul. Though everything was there in hell, comforts were no longer comfortable, luxuries were no longer luxurious, and pleasures were no longer pleasurable. Such a feeling is not alien to human beings. Some could feel that even during their earthly life. Though they have everything, they don't feel anything. Though they get all that they desire, they don't enjoy anything. The wise wrote about it in the Hebrew Bible. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. The rich man could not understand this. The more he had in hell, the more dissatisfied he became. There was no satisfaction in anything. It was like throwing everything into a bottomless pit. There were constant hunger and thirst for more. To eradicate this feeling, the souls threw themselves into the unquenchable fire. They tormented themselves with all the procedures detailed in Dante's Divine Comedy. But the thirst persisted. They wept and gnashed their teeth because of that. The eyes of the rich man were not satisfied with seeing and searching. They grew big and became more powerful than the top-end binoculars. Because of that, he could see the outskirts called heaven from his abode in hell. He always had a poor opinion of that place. One thing puzzled him though. When compared to hell, there was absolutely nothing in heaven. But none of those heavenly souls felt insecure. Though they followed a minimalistic lifestyle, no one seemed to be uncomfortable or restless about it. But that's not the case with those in hell. Though they lacked nothing, they never felt safety and security. All of them had a lavish lifestyle, but none of them was comfortable. They all had phobic anxiety and felt enormous restlessness, as if they lost something so precious to them. After doing severe opposition research, the rich man came to know that the souls in heaven were satisfied by the living water. As usual, he wanted to get it for himself. He said, "Whatever I inherited on earth, I was able to shift to hell. Even the money I could transfer to my account in hell. I don't think that the people in heaven are allowed to do that. That's why they have nothing with them. It is easy to allure them with my wealth. I will make an offer that no one could resist." The rich man lifted his eyes and searched for someone to negotiate. He spotted Lazarus, got elated, and said to himself, "I know that beggar. He will fall for my offer." But Lazarus was peacefully sleeping on the lap of an old man. The rich man was indignant. Who sleeps like that during broad daylight? No one sleeps in hell, even though it is dark here all the time. Everyone engages in some useful work or the other. When I was on the earth, I slowly reduced my sleeping hours. I never slept toward the end of my life. I gave all my attention to my work and God's ministry. Anyways, it looks like I cannot wake him up from here. The old guy seems to be his father. It is written Father Abraham in his jersey. It must be his name. He must be a beggar too. Let me negotiate with that old timer. The rich man shouted from the top of his lungs, "Father Abraham!" Abraham replied, "You don't need to shout. I can hear you. The network connection is good here. Speak normally." "Okay, Father. Send Lazarus. to dip the end of his finger in the living water and cool my tongue, for I am in anguish in this flame. Why don't you come here and get the water by yourself? Asked Abraham curiously. The rich man searched for a lame excuse but couldn't find any. He replied, I don't feel like climbing to the outskirts. There is absolutely nothing there for me. We have everything in our hell valley. The only problem is we don't have the living water. We are fine otherwise. Abraham felt sorry and said, everything is on fire, but you say you are fine? I know you would say that. You never acknowledge your condition. You are in denial all your life. That's the state of every soul in hell. Though they are restless, they never seek rest in heaven. Though they roam a lot, they never come here to quench their thirst. But look at the souls in heaven. They don't want to travel at all. They just want to be still like a statue in one place. Between you and us, there is a great mental block, in order that those who could pass from here to you are not willing, and none wants to cross from there to us. The rich man opened up. No offense, Father. To be honest, there are so many tax collectors and prostitutes in your place. I don't feel comfortable in their midst. You remind me of an elder son who stood outside because his father allowed a prodigal son inside, said Abraham sorrowfully. He then asked, what do you mean you are not comfortable? Did you not collect temple tax from the tax collectors? With a smiling face, did you not accept their offerings? Did you not pray and bless their families when they contributed a large sum of money to your synagogue? And what do you have against the prostitutes? Looking at their pictures, did you not ejaculate all your life? Did you not hide and ogle from your secret places? Others may not know it, but you know it very well. The rich man got irritated. He shouted, how dare you speak so explicitly to a religious man? I never slept with any of those prostitutes. Abraham replied calmly, yes, I know that. You didn't even sleep with your wife on a regular basis. Some of your children are not yours actually. It was not a secret to you, but you didn't divorce your wife. You prided yourself thinking that you were magnanimous to an adulterous woman. But that was not the reason why you continued your marriage. Your people never elect a divorcee as their high priest. Just to save the election and your family pride, you kept your wife with yourself. God is not only against divorce, but also against such motives for being in a marriage. Please also don't pat on your back because you didn't sleep with a prostitute. Truly I say to you, everyone who looks at a man or a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery in the heart with him or her. The rich man's blood started to boil. He shouted, looking with lustful intent is adultery? Don't be ridiculous. What you say is not practical. It is also not written in the 10 Commandments. I have kept those laws from my childhood. I am a scribe by profession. Do you want to have a theological debate with me? From which institute of scribery did you complete your theological studies? Tell me, why do you prefix Father to your name? What are your qualifications? Listening to your talk, it seems like you are an illiterate. There was a long silence in heaven and hell for some time. After that, the rich man came for compromise. Okay, let's take a deep breath now. Let me make an offer that you cannot resist. Whatever I have in hell, I will give it to you. Just give me a drop of that living water. That's a generous offer, replied Abraham with a big surprise. Why didn't you make that decision during your earthly life? Did not the preacher whom you met on the roadside instruct you to follow him by leaving everything to the poor? If you had done that, he would have given you the living water, and you wouldn't have restlessly pursued after power, possession, and pleasure. The rich man was puzzled. What do you mean you don't want any of my possession? You have absolutely nothing with you in heaven. Let me give you what I have. I don't want anything from you, said Abraham calmly. If you want the few things that we have in heaven, please ask us. Though we received them as gifts from God and His angels, gladly we will send them all to you. But we cannot send you the living water. He does not flow through hell. He flows only through heaven and earth. The rich man got startled. He asked, is living water a person? Yes, he is a person. You met him several times during your earthly life, but you did not recognize him, replied Abraham. The rich man was confused. What do you mean I did not recognize him? I never missed a single VIP in my society. I always treated them with respect and honor. I hosted and feasted with them several times at my residence. Abraham replied, yes, I know that. That's why, with many of them, your wife had affairs. It was easy for her to fall into temptation. Something like that was about to happen to my wife when I sought shelter under an Egyptian emperor. But God intervened and saved my dignity. By the way, did you not neglect anyone in your life? The only people whom I avoided are the ones who are found now in heaven, replied the rich man and asked with contempt, is heaven a place for the reprobates? When these people were on earth, God struck them with sickness because of their sinfulness. God impoverished them because of their impious life. Therefore, if they come before us, we hide our faces. If they walk one way, we walk the other way. It's a shameful thing for us to associate with them. It's a bad omen for us to even look at them. Abraham replied, that may be the reason why you missed the living water. If he is a VIP on earth, no one is ashamed of him. No one avoids him. Since he is not an important person, people are not comfortable with him. Whoever avoids him, he also avoids that person. The rich man shrugged it off and said, if that's the case, it is not my fault that I missed him. If he wants to get the attention of respectable people like me, he should have joined our ranks. He lives on the earth to save sinners. Usually, he is found among those who are rejected by society, explained Abraham and asked, do you know any such people? Please be practical, replied the rich man. How can we get down from our position to know such people? How can we risk our witnessing life by mixing with those low lives? Unless it is for some charity business, we usually stay away from the unholy ones. Abraham asked, what makes you think that you are holy? What kind of a silly question is this? Wondered the rich man. Here is the list of my spiritual practices. A countless number of times I have read the holy book from cover to cover. I have won so many accolades in scripture knowledge exams. I constantly pray and thank God that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like those tax collectors. I fast twice a week. My doctors said that it is not just good for my physical life, it is also good for my spiritual life. I instruct everyone to do that. I give tithes of all that I get to the temple. The people in charge of the temple treasury are good stewards of God's money. With a collected offertory, they buy lands as future investments, build properties for rental income, and invest in government and individual projects for dividends and benefits. It is God's money. It should be put into good use. Otherwise, we will be held accountable by God Himself. I don't think that's what God means by accountability, said Abraham disapprovingly and asked, are you done with your list? or do you have more to add? Wait, there are many more. The rich man continued proudly. I pray without ceasing for the unreached and the underprivileged. From our childhood, we are taught to be charitable. When it comes to giving, even to sinners, I show my generosity. Every month, well-respected pastors, preachers, and religious workers visit me on my salary day. They offer prayer and collect money for doing ministry. You can talk to these good people of God if you want. They are here with me in hell. It's all right. You can tell me what they do, replied Abraham. The rich man continued. Regularly they come to our synagogue and share their experience from the mission field. They narrate story after story, explaining how much they labor to convert these wicked wretches. They ask us to tarry in prayer because the people among whom they work are like animals, not knowing the right custom from the wrong custom. Therefore, our missionaries visit them, but they always maintain their distance. These filthy sinners, however, long to mix with us. One old pauper requested one of our missionaries to marry his undereducated daughter. How dare he could make that indecent proposal? May God forbid such unions. Our missionaries are well trained in our customs. They are meticulous when it comes to upholding our traditions. They neither marry nor are given in marriage in the place of their ministry. If they do that, they will lose their witness. Therefore, if they want to marry, they come back to their community, choose someone of their status, and marry before God in our synagogue. After that, they go back as a family and work with those savages. Abraham felt obnoxious, but he realized that he also did something like that during his earthly life. He started sobbing when that realization came in his heart. We were sojourners in an unknown land, started Abraham. When I wanted to find a bride for my son Isaac, I did not seek a wise girl from the people among whom I was sojourning. Instead, I risked the life of my favorite servant Eliezer and sent him on a long journey to find a girl from my community called the Arameans. Frankly speaking, my folks were no better, but still, I did not want my son to marry an outsider. From among my relatives, Eliezer found a beautiful young virgin called Rebecca. However, it was unfortunate that there were several issues in that proposal. Rebecca was 20 years old, but Isaac was 40 years old. Actually, we tried to find a beautiful virgin closer to his age. As you know very well, it is almost impossible for a good-looking girl to remain as a virgin for that long. That's why, when God decided to be born in the world, He did not choose a beautiful virgin. To say it bluntly, He chose an ugly duckling called Mary. I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to call anyone ugly. God feels bad if I use that word to describe His creation. I'm supposed to use the phrase differently beautiful. But if I use that phrase, you may not understand what I am talking about. That's why I refer to her with the you word. My point is, since Mary was differently beautiful, it was easy for her to keep her virginity until the appointed time. Some say that she even continued as a celibate for the rest of her life. If she was an attractive woman, the world would have finished her physical purity in just no time. Trust me, I am talking from my painful experience. When I fell in love with my beautiful half-sister Sarah, I did not wait for her to grow up. I married her when she was in her early teens. If I had delayed a little longer, I might not have married her as a virgin. Who knows, she might not have accepted my proposal in the first place. Well, that's a topic for another day. I got married and lived happily ever after. Even after our union as husband and wife, Sarah was harassed by several men. She was also not spared by some women in our neighborhood. It seemed to me that the whole society wanted a piece of her. She was kidnapped twice by powerful men. Always my life was in danger because of her attractiveness. If God had not stood on our side, my whole family would have been torn into pieces. Physical beauty is a multi-edged sword. It can hurt anyone, including those who are not at all in the picture. Unlike my wife, Mary had it easy in her life. She was neither beautiful in form nor lovely to look at. No one preferred her for anything, but God chose her. That's why she sang with a grateful heart, "For God has regarded the low estate of His handmaiden. For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed." Let me tell you, Mary is such a good songwriter and singer. Her song called the Magnificat is one of the greatest songs of all time. She may not be physically attractive, but she is a rock star in heaven. We all love her so much. She shares a special intimacy with our Lord. They always whisper to each other and giggle uncontrollably. When they are together, they are in their own heaven. I wish I had that kind of a relationship with the King of Kings. Indeed, Mary is blessed among both men and women. Anyways, back to my son's story. It was not just the age difference of 2 decades. Isaac was Rebecca's paternal uncle. Can it get more awkward than that? Since we took enormous risk and pain in finding Rebecca, we did not want to leave her. We made that poor girl to marry her old uncle. We were wealthy and therefore she also did not make it an issue. But our society did not spare us. It spoke ill of all of us. Similar reproach, pain or awkwardness waits for many who search marriage alliance in their class or community. If they step down and move outside their circle, they could easily find excellent proposals right under their nose. Since I was not broad-minded, my son married someone of the same age as his niece. They worked hard to overcome their differences, but something was always lacking. It may be because of my desire to homogenize my generation. The bond between Isaac and Rebecca was not strong enough. Or to put it plainly, since they were from the same community, their relationship was not strong enough. Though they were happy during the initial stages of their marriage, they couldn't continue that passion for long. My son got depressed, started overeating, and turned out to be a glutton. My daughter-in-law took advantage of that and tricked him to get blessings for her favorite son Jacob. No wonder my grandson Jacob also became a trickster like his mother Rebecca. Since Isaac couldn't bless his firstborn son Esau, his heart got shattered. That resulted in a broken marriage and a scattered family. I was narrow-minded, but my son's family paid the cost. I became a bad example, but by the grace of God, my great-grandson Joseph was not like me. He was open to marrying an Egyptian. From my generation, Salmon, the son of Nahshon, was not particular about marrying a virgin. He married a prostitute named Rahab. Though she was a Canaanite woman from Jericho, she showed extraordinary faith in the God of Israel. Many want to marry a believer, but how many of them are open to accept a believer who was a prostitute? Rahab's son Boaz was also a broad-minded man. He was not particular about marrying a girl from his community. He married an outsider named Ruth. She was a poor widow from an unclean race called the Moabites. But that woman was a precious pearl. She was the great-grandmother of King David. She took him under her wings and taught poetry and wisdom when he was growing up. She is the woman behind the greatest king ever lived. Even now, they both share a special bond with each other. Instead of following these good examples, millions of people in every generation follow my bad example. They justify their wicked actions by saying, Abraham took a girl for his son from his community. Therefore, we can also continue the tradition. Thus, in my name, they perpetuate an evil custom. I have become a bad example for many. The rich man was not convinced with whatever Abraham said. He tried to console that sobbing man though. "Please don't cry," said he with a soft voice. "You have done nothing wrong. How can you mingle with strangers? How can you marry or given in marriage to a bad neighborhood? You can pray for them or be a missionary to them, but you cannot become one among them. It contaminates your racial purity. If you mingle with the poor, you will also lose your hard-earned money. Therefore, you should be always on your guard and resist that temptation." Let me give you a piece of advice. We are not supposed to get into a relationship with these destitute. Rather, we are supposed to use them for making money. When it comes to fundraising, the deprived, the sinners, or the invalids are the only avenue for us. If we say it is for the poor, immediately the donors open their wallets. If we say mission to the unreached, immediately they donate in large amounts. No one wants to directly engage with the outcast. If we say we will do that job for them, happily they give their money. We have learned that secret. Therefore, for all the essential needs of our temple, synagogue, or government, we raise funds in the name of the marginalized. We collect offerings in the name of the afflicted or the unreached. The recent trend is to ask money in the name of saving the planet. We then do a few convincing publicity stunts for our donors to see and divert the rest of the money for other constructive purposes. We also retain a handsome amount for our services. No wonder God warned us against practicing our righteousness before others, said Abraham to himself, and kept his peace. "Why are you silent? Say something about my witnessing life," cried the rich man. With tear-filled eyes, Abraham replied, "Usually, the living water misses the attention of many. Even if he gets some, it is because a bunch of people wants to make money out of his misery. They make a living by saying his name. They gain respect and importance in the name of serving him or his creation. Since they are not his workers, our Lord politely says to them to depart from him. But they never leave. They shamelessly continue their evil schemes in God's name. They go on from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived, and just like you, they end up becoming the victim of their own con." The rich man couldn't understand what Abraham was saying, but he realized that he cannot get what he wanted. He mustered his strength and made a final request to Abraham. "Please send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, no sisters. My parents killed them when they were born. They should have killed my brothers also when they were born. All are drunkards now, totally spoiled by their friends. That's why I insisted my parents to give their wealth to me. I don't want them to waste their inheritance on their prodigal sons. If my brothers come to hell, they will fight with me for their share of the wealth. I don't want that to happen. Moreover, we have so many respectable people in hell. I cannot allow my brothers to spoil my family's name here. Send Lazarus to instruct them so that they may not come to my place. They don't belong here. Let them come to your place. They belong to your company of degenerates in heaven. No offense though." "None taken," said Abraham. The preacher and his true followers sacrificed themselves for these lost sheep. With peace and joy beyond understanding, they both labor together to bind their brokenness and do everything to bring them to my place. If they fail, no one can succeed. Hearing the description of your brothers, most probably they will land in my lap like Lazarus.